I call Sarah Dowie.
Mr Speaker, Talofa Lava, greetings, and thank you for allowing me to take this call on the Gambling Amendment Bill number 3. And number 3 suggests something. It's a series of technical bills off the back of a Parent Act, the Gambling Act 2003, which is a reform bill to minimise harm in the industry of gambling. And this bill, I believe, is an example of the MMP environment at work. It's government working with its coalition partners, in particular the Honourable Peter Dunn, who's shepherded this bill through the House and the Māori Party. But I also want to take this time to thank the Government Administration Select Committee. We often hear that it is a high-powered select committee hearing some very important bills, and I want to thank them for their collegial spirit on panel beating this bill into shape. And I think it's worth noting that even though this is an amendment bill and it's technical in nature, that gambling, and this is certainly something that I've learned from the submitters that we heard in Wellington and Auckland, gambling is something that affects all of New Zealanders, whether directly or indirectly at some point in those people's lives. And that's why I think that these bills should not be taken for granted. They do affect us, and they are important when we're finessing this industry to prevent harm, to minimise harm. And in particular, this bill is with respect to Class 4 pokie machines, so that's pokies held off-site from casinos. And we are trying to make the industry more transparent and, of course, at the end of the day, a better industry. So we heard from 126 submitters, and as I said before, we heard them in Wellington and Auckland, and most of those submitters were in support or had conditional support or a mixed view to the mooted draft bill. There were some submitters not in support of the bill because, as we heard from our counterparts, they believe that the bill did not go far enough with respect to some of the harm minimisation measures. And I mean, I think that their intent is admirable, and I certainly listened carefully to what they were saying. But at the end of the day, I believe that that was going beyond the ambit of what this bill was considering. But it was certainly educational for me to hear that, and I take their wisdom on board. So, with respect to what this bill is trying to achieve, in the first instance, it is to increase transparency and around grant decision-making. So this bill introduces new requirements for publicising society's grants. You know, the details as to what's been applied for, what is received, the purpose, what's been granted, and also that this information is detailed and sent through to the Department of Internal Affairs by way as to achieve a balance and check on that society, and so that the public can scrutinise that society and what it is providing, the funds that it is sending back into the community where essentially it has been lost. And the bill also requires any real conflicts of interest to be published between societies who collect the money from gambling Class 4 pokies and those grant recipients. Again, adding to the transparency and the accountability in the community as to how those funds have been applied. Regulations are to be developed later, and they will set out the detail as to how all of this will be achieved. So it may well be that general information is published in a local newspaper, but then more detailed information is published online. But regardless of the mix of that, the information will be readily available, and hence that adds to the accountability. The second theme of this bill is to increase transparency around the operations of societies themselves. Under regulation, the publishing of financial statements and the form in which they're published by societies will be mandated, highlighting the efficiency of the operation itself. Again, we are running with the theme of transparency, trying to tidy up the industry and filter funds back into the community in which it was lost. The third theme I want to touch on is simplifying compliance costs and venue payments, and we've heard from members opposite that they believe that a commission-based system will incentivise gambling societies to increase machines or be irresponsible hosts. They also oppose rewarding good performing societies with longer licences at the discretion of the Department of Internal Affairs. From this side, we don't believe that this has foundation. There is no evidence to suggest that moving to a commission-based system would incentivise gambling, and the design of any new payment system will be detailed in regulations. And as we're advised, DIA will run a full consultative process with respect to that. And I think that that consultative process is extremely important to give more thought on exactly what is the best cost recovery basis to keep compliance costs down, but again to keep things simple. So, and furthermore, the grant of longer licences to societies that perform does not equate with an abuse, because those licences will be at the discretion of the regulator, who will take into account the suitability of the applicant and past performance. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to end this speech without some examples of some responsible Class 4 operators that are performing well, and that of course leads me back to my own electorate with the Invercargill Licensing Trust. You know, they are responsible for sponsoring our community in a fantastic way. They have allocated total grants of $49.57 million during the 2008 to 2013 period, which is an average of $9.92 million per year. And they have delivered some really big ticket items like our stadium, our ILT Stadium Southland, and the Velodrome, which is responsible to some really fantastic projects. The stadium is integral, obviously, to our community. The weather is not always great. Of course, I keep waxing on that our people are so positive. We don't need weather to keep us positive, but we can go indoors and use our stadium and enjoy that. But also, they've delivered electronic whiteboards in schools. They've built learners' pools for swimming, and even contributed to tertiary scholarships. And in saying that, they've granted more than 170 scholarships to individual Invercargill students, locally and abroad. And each student receives $2,000 for 3 years, and that's a total paid in 2012 and 2013 of $374,000 odd. So this is an example of a society working hard for the community. It can be done well, and I believe that these measures in this bill will uplift the industry, make it more transparent, and minimise harm as the 2003 Act set to do. So with that, I commend this bill to the House.